Now, looking at your filmography, how does your process kind of differ when you work on some of the more fantastical projects, things like Stranger Things or Saw or Star Trek, versus more real world stuff like Flamin' Hot or Cheap by the Dozen?
It's definitely a different process. I think it's also like with a lot of that stuff, the bigger the scale and ambition is, usually there's like you're part of a well-oiled machine. Mm-hmm. Stranger Things, I'm part of an incredible team of sound people, but we all kind of do our own things on the show. So it can scatter a little bit in that sense. And people, big shows, this happens a lot where you get compartmentalized into like, oh, it's a period movie with a lot of horses, so this person's going to cut all the horses and this person's going to cut all the carriages and this it can get into that kind of pretty easily on those kinds of things where there's just a lot of material to cover and there's just not enough manpower, so you got to like really bring in a lot of people. But I think that's one of the biggest distinguishing characteristics of working on those shows is like you're usually part of the big team. And I would assume it's probably the same for visual effects because, you have an Avengers movie or something. It's like, 5,000 VFX people, but on like a more dramatic film, it's that is sort of minimalist with visual effects. You don't need as many.
I'll let you know when I get an Avengers movie.
Well, I know even with Stranger Things, I mean, it's nuts. Like the visual effects team is bananas. And and they were working on we were all on a crazy schedule, but I don't know how they did it.
I'm curious. So what is something that might be misunderstood about your department to people who are outside of the field, other than assuming that it's all Foley?
Yes, it's all Foley. I think just the level of work and details and just the scale at which sound operates. Like, I don't think people realize that when they're watching a final movie, it's like maybe 10% of what they originally recorded on set or something like that. I mean, as far as dialogue's concerned, it's probably going to be a bit more than that. But when we're talking about everything else, effects, backgrounds, whatever, most of that stuff has to be redone from scratch and, Foley and everything else. I mean, anytime I've ever talked to anyone about it, it's just so hard to you kind of have to pick a scene and show them like, this is what it's like without any sound, or this is what it's like just with production sound. And if we're talking about like a big action scene, the production sound is probably not going to be great because they know it's going to get all redone anyways. And then it's like, here's the backgrounds, here's the Foley, here's the sound design, here's the dialogue, here's the music. Those are all the layers. And then, from there, like you can kind of get an idea of just how much work goes into it. And just how much crafting it requires, and how much like a lot of the sound design is just really like sonic manipulation, like trying to mess with you in some way or evoke a certain emotion, and is very similar to music in that sense, but I think it doesn't get as much understanding of that from the everyday movie watcher.
Now, I know you're doing most of this in the post end, and so I assume maybe it's been a minute since you've been on set holding a boom mic. Very important question.
Mm-hmm.
What is the best way to let the crew know it's time for room tone without pissing people off?
It's a fight. I mean, part of the reason I stopped doing production stuff was just because it wasn't in my personality to be aggressive about that stuff the way you have to be. And sometimes you have to. Sometimes you got to piss people off and be like, shut up, it's room tone time. Because you got to fight for those things as a sound person. Because if you're lucky, you'll end up with a director who respects and understands what you're doing. I have so much respect for the people that do location recording, because it's, the production mixer and the boom operator, all those guys. It's its own other beast. It's its own craft, and it's very difficult to do well. And and it's always obvious when it's not done well. But I feel like when people do it incredibly well, like people don't really notice, I guess, or like they don't give it the credit it deserves. So I definitely I feel for my other side of the wall sound brethren, because you basically just have to be a dick. If it was up to me, I'd just have an air horn and then just get everyone to shut up that way, and then do room tone, wait for the reverb of that to like trail away, and then like, all right, shut up now.